if you do roll equity and you become part of the team, prepare to work harder than you've ever worked. You're going to be in charge of everything. Just understand that. That's part of the deal, right?
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome out to another episode of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we take a look at what is changing in the pest and lawn industries, and we take you to the front lines, those that are driving those changes. I'm Donnie Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, which has Triangle Pest as well as Triangle Lawn, both of which are my favorite companies. And with me, as always, is Mr. Dan Gordon, I don't know, I'm just trying to think
Who runs your second favorite company?
Oh, there you go. Yes. So introduce yourself, our lovely sponsors, our amazing topic, and even more amazing guests.
Yes. So, hello, everyone. It's Dan Gordon from PCO Bookkeepers and M&A Specialists, accounting and CFO services for the pest and lawn industry, as well as exit planning services, brokerage work. And if you enjoy our podcast, please support our sponsors. If you're interested in marketing, that would be Coalmarch by WorkWave or coalmarch.com. And if you're into industry or you're looking for a quote for industry-specific general liability insurance, auto insurance, workers' comp insurance, et cetera, EPLI, call on PestSure. You can visit them at pestsure.com. And if you're interested in joining a PMP Industry Insider peer group, please visit pmpindustryiinsider.com/peer groups or go to episode 136, and you can hear our friend and facilitator and guest several times on our podcast, David Billingsley. And he is outstanding, and he will do that. And today, our two favorite guests are Donnie and I, and that's who will be on the podcast. But this is a really, really interesting topic because it probably affects every single one of the listeners, all those that listen to our podcast, and it's when private equity comes calling, navigating the acquisition process with private equity. And, as a broker, we deal with lots and lots of private equity firms, some good, some not so good, some who say they have money, some who don't have money, but say they have money. And we're going to dig into that. But I actually wrote a couple of sentences. Let me read them because I think it kind of outlines exactly where we are in the industry with private equity. Yeah.
Before you get going, first of all, I'm so grateful that you told people that you're reading, because when you try to pretend like you're not reading, but you're actually reading, it doesn't go so well, which you have mentioned.
Well, no, I'm going to read this because I wrote it. And
hang on. So. That's the first thing, which I'm glad that you told everyone. The second one is I want to just circle back on one thing. And if you're listening to this and you're not a part of a peer group, I have just been so, and by the way, I'm not pushing our peer groups, but I've just been so impressed. We have a communication platform that these peer groups communicate on, and some of the conversations and some of the ideas that have been coming out of these peer groups have
really
just been
good.
Amazing. Some of the way that people are leveraging AI and some of the other things that they're doing. I mean, it's just been pretty innovative. It's been fun kind of sitting back and watching. But long story short, if you're not a member of a peer group, highly recommend that you investigate that idea. It's a great way to hold yourself accountable, especially as an owner, because oftentimes it's easy once you're running a company to kind of kick back. And the other thing is it's more difficult, I believe, to get new ideas. And so these peer groups are an amazing vehicle to do both. So with that, Dan,
and just so that you know, one of the groups that I actually facilitate, it's Donnie is a member of, and there's probably 10 or 12 companies in it, and the ideas are just tremendous. And it's the same concept with all our peer groups. That's just one of them.
Yep.
So that's pretty neat. So let me read my couple of sentences.
Okay.
All right.
Do it.
Okay. Let's face it. It's kind of exciting to get your first private equity call. And if you're like most of our clients and friends, you are being contacted several times per month. It is flattering, as it means someone with deep pockets who has money well, maybe, is interested in your company. You've spent years building a profitable company and finally somebody's taking notice. But why are they contacting you now? And how should you handle the call? Should you even return it or take the call? So, with that, how's that for a good frame for our?
It's a good frame. I'm just some of these questions. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to answer
All
that
right.
on air, but
Well,
yeah, for me personally.
well,
So I will share what I do, but let's get
the
it.
road to successful acquisition is complex and requires careful consideration. If you're serious about exiting or partnering with PE, here are some things to know or do. And now we will go to our impromptu conversation.
Okay. All right. Good.
Okay.
Good. So there's a couple
So,
things that you said in here that I'm
okay.
just going to lead off on, which is um, if someone's contacting you, how should you handle the call? Should you ever return it? Should you take the call? I'm going to make a couple admissions. And by the way, this is absolutely not advice. Don't do what I do. I'm just telling you what I do.
But by the way, when I say call, it could be an email, it could be a mail and a letter. It
Yes.
could, you know, so
Yes. Okay. So
mhm.
first of all, I will say I am definitely one of these folks that I get these emails at least daily. I'm grateful for that. And it is flattering. Um, but I generally speaking do not return them. Well, number one is that I'm not technically a good target because I don't want to sell. I'm not right now. I will sell eventually. That is true, but I don't want to do it right now. Second thing is, um, I don't not only return, I like run away when I hear we're interested in your space and we looked at your company. So that's basically saying, hey, we're amateurs and we just want to learn on you. And because I mean, if you've ever done any kind of acquisition, and I'm sure we're going to get into this
Mhm.
later, it's a long, arduous, emotional, time consuming process that
Yeah,
just takes a lot out of you.
a lot of
I don't
energy.
care who you, yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I've got someone kicking tires, and I'm going to go through that just so that you can learn. Try again.
We've
not,
had
not
deals,
this
so
guy. Yeah.
we'll talk about some of the deals that we've worked on that have gone nowhere, except waste everybody's time. And I'll tell
Yes.
you how some telltale signs of when that happens and how to avoid that. Um, because, like you said, we're researching the space and we think that
Mm-hmm.
you've got a great company. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're a private company. Where am I going to get any information about
Right.
your company other
Exactly.
than maybe your website on what services you offer? So it's kind of interesting. But what are some of the things that, let's say that you do want to, you know, go down the road and just listen because it is interesting if you've got the time and the inclination. Um, but and there are some great deals. I mean, we've done some deals with private equity, and some of these PE firms are terrific and have deep pockets and are committed to the industry, and that's what they want to do. But uh, as a company, how do you maximize the value? Because quite honestly, private equity for a while was lagging behind the strategics in terms of valuation, and now they are either at where the valuations are for strategics or where strategics are, or they're actually ahead of them, meaning that they would offer you more money. However, it's a different kind of setup. So, um, but before talking to them, you've got to remember that most acquirers who have deep pockets, strategics and or PEs, they're not really interested in buying companies that they have to fix. If your
Mm-hmm.
company's broken, those are not the best buyers. If your company's broken and you want to sell your company, another local company is probably the way to go, right? Because, I've heard from time and time again from M&A directors that, you know, uh, they're judged on the performance, the short-term performance of these acquisitions. And they're not going to take big risks like that on companies that are broken. So you really need to assess your readiness before you talk to them. Are you truly ready for a PE buyout? And you got to consider your, operational. Are you operationally efficient? is your financial performance good? Is your EBITDA good? Is your market position good? Is your recurring to non-recurring? How's your growth? So you really need to take a look at your strengths and weaknesses. And if you're real serious about it, you want to be the best in class company. And so your valuation will, um, you know, be high and make you happy. So, and also, don't just focus on a headline price, especially with PE, because you got to consider earnouts and rolling equity and things like that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Well, we're going to cover this a little bit later on, but I think it's an important time to talk about it, where you're talking about assessing your readiness, and I think that's important. I think another key part of this is exactly what's your objective, right? What are you trying to get out of the transaction? Knowing that up front and being clear on it up front, because I can promise you, attorneys, we can make a ton of jokes, and if you're an attorney, listen to this. I apologize now. Okay, no, I don't. But I will say they are a creative bunch. And when it comes to details in the deal, if you're not clear, you might end up down a road that you did not anticipate going down. And you're so far into the deal that you're willing to bend a lot more than you probably would not be if you were kind of out of the emotion and out of the heat and made that decision beforehand. I know for me personally,
Sounds like you're speaking from
yes,
experience.
I am very much speaking from experience. And
Yeah.
I mean, I learned from that, right? It's like, okay, well, here's some things I'm not going to negotiate on. And I have seen success. In fact, one of them, Dan, you helped. A really good friend of mine exited, and I remember there was one specific point, and I'm not gonna share what it was, but it was part of the earnout. He was a zero earnout guy, and it became a big contention point in the deal, and he won because he was willing to walk from the deal, and they
Mhm.
couldn't believe it. And in the end, he got it with no, I mean, legitimately, he got the no earnout thing take. And I know the reason that happened was because he was upfront and he was committed to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, had he been in the heat of the deal, I'm pretty sure he would have relented. So I know we're going to talk about it later, but I just think it's a really good, important point as you assess your readiness. Really be thinking about, here's my non-negotiables, and here's what has to happen in order for a transaction to make sense. That's all.
And that's a great point, because if you're real serious about exiting, then it's worth all the time and effort to go down the road with PE, with strategics, or even
Correct.
local companies. And it's worth it, right?
Yep.
It's a lot of time. It's an emotional roller coaster. The best deals that I've ever seen get done, everybody's pissed off at the end, right? So, be prepared for that. But if you're just kind of trying to educate yourself on what's out there and,
Hmm.
maybe answer one of these letters and whatnot. What Donnie said was absolutely true, because if you're real clear about it and they say, yeah, we can meet that, then maybe you're willing to go to the second step. But if you're not
Hmm.
going to, if they're not interested in accommodating those first steps, then it's tough to go to the second step, and you may be wasting your time. So,
Yeah.
and be careful about wasting your time. And your time is valuable too. But if now you start bringing in lawyers and accountants and
Well, even
uh,
your own
you know,
staff, right? I mean, now they
it's
realize, I mean,
expensive, right?
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Okay. All right. So let's
Yep.
keep rolling.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Now, should you decide that you want to do this, it's my recommendation that you assemble a strong team. And I don't mean team your pest control company, a strong M&A team. And I recommend, obviously this is probably going to sound self-serving, and it is, uh, a good broker who understands how to get a deal done with, how a transaction works. Um, a good lawyer, which, we've had Mark Ruff on, and he's an outstanding lawyer, good M&A guy, but also he knows the pest control industry real well. He's not the only one, but that's one of those things that you want to do. A good accounting firm, and uh, luckily, if you work with us, you get our accounting firm and our brokerage firm. But it's not really the headline number that you get; it's the after-tax money that you get from a deal. And so you want it structured properly. And there's a whole bunch of, um, planning ideas and opportunities that you can take advantage of if you understand how this all works. Okay. So the guidance is invaluable in navigating, all aspects of the deal. And, we've worked on a whole bunch of deals, and we've worked on some great ones that closed and some ones that absolutely should have been avoided, and ended up at just as we thought they would. So, the expertise will allow you to have a successful deal. Um,
One of the things that I was thinking about as you're talking about this is that, you know, one of the biggest advantages I see to using a team that has done this before is that oftentimes when you get in a deal, there's ideas thrown out. There's, first of all, these, I don't know, and I'm going to pick on PE for a little bit, but I swear they go to some school where they come up with jargon that's just ridiculous, and then they throw it around on conference calls and stuff like that. But
you mean like dry
nonetheless,
powder?
oh, dry powder,
Oh,
talk
we've got some dry
tape. We got
powder.
some talk tape, making waves, whatever. Anyway, so, but
I'll run
getting
it up the
back,
flagpole.
that's right. But, you know, a lot of times there's these ideas that are getting thrown out. And if you're not like, listen, it's like buying a house, right? That's why you use a real estate agent or whatever. It's something that you may do one, twice. If you're lucky, I say lucky, meaning that, you might do it 5 or 6 times. It's not something that you do every day. And there's a lot of details that you're not really going to understand the ramifications of until maybe 2 to 5 years later. And so, what I want to know is someone who has done a few deals, has seen this play out, and can say, look, if you do this, here's what you can expect in 2 years. Or if you do this, this is what the ramifications are going to be. Hey, I've seen that company do this before, and here's what really went down, when it was time to come through. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I also mean in a positive way. I mean, I have seen this happen several times where a company will come in and let's just say someone who's selling has some ridiculous number in their brain. I mean, just it's completely overpriced in their mind. And a company will say, "Yeah, absolutely, we can meet that number." But then they put in like some crazy earnout, or they basically it's a marketing thing to lock them down, and then they beat them up in due diligence and put the deal where it needs to be. And so
That
it's good.
absolutely happens.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely,
so
that
my
happens.
point is that and here the owner is thinking, "Wow, I got my number." Now they didn't really get their number because they got
Well, the other thing, I thought you were going there, and I think you kind of did, but just to put it in perspective, is that you sell pest control every day. You negotiate terms with your chemical vendor, with your insurance company, with all, you negotiate with everybody. So for you to negotiate a deal, you may or may not get the best deal because you've never done it, because there's so many intricacies that you have to work out.
hmm
And usually, if you use somebody like a broker, and I think we're really good, there's some other guys out there who are pretty good too. Um, they will unlock that value and pay for themselves. And by the way, anybody who's going to Pest World, I am on a panel with two other brokers in the industry who are, really, they're some of the better brokers, and we're going to be doing a panel at NPMA, and it should be fun. Look at the NPMA brochure for Pest World, and I think that NPMA thought that this was important enough to get us together to do this panel, and it's going to be actually. The MC is going to be John Myers, so it's going to be interesting.
It's also they're not going to have shirts on. It's going to be a cage match to the death, which I'm excited about as well. So
No,
anyway.
we kind of drew boundaries. You handle this, I'll handle that. It's going to be civil, but actually, we're all good friends,
Yeah,
so
I get it.
that's fine. But having a strong team is extremely important. And having Donnie just say that you're going to run through legal fees like crazy, a good broker will be able to work with the attorney to keep those fees to a minimum and tell you, yes, we need to focus on this point and it's going to cost you some hours with the attorney, or no, this is not that important and whatnot.
Okay, I have to say something here because this is a key part, which is I have yet to do a deal that did not get over the line. Because what's going to happen is it's attorneys gone wild, right? They're going to get in a deal, and there's going to be all these little, oh my gosh, it happens every single time. And Dan, you can feel free to disagree, but they get off on these tangents of what ifs, which turns into two what ifs. It's like a logarithmic function. And then that goes, I mean, I'm sorry, exponential, right? It's an exponential. And then like 2 is 4, and all of a sudden 4 is 16, 16 is 32. And then all of a sudden it's like you're mired in all these ridiculous possibilities, details. And they're
So
going, they're
when
going
you
all
hear
over
a
the
lawyer, when you hear a lawyer say, this is a theoretical argument, but the theoretical argument is that the sky could fall tomorrow, but most
correct.
likely it's not going to.
Correct.
But what if it does?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it does, I don't think you need to worry about any of this stuff. But that's the kind of thing these theoretical arguments are made, and the lawyers love to go down that
Well,
those
they'll kill
rabbit
a
holes.
deal. They
Yep.
absolutely will kill a deal. And so I guess the point I'm making out of this is that you want someone who's on your team that will basically get these attorneys on the same call with you and whoever the decision maker is on PE, and you go line item by line item, and that person can put that kind of stuff to bed, right? So you can move forward in the deal. Like, you don't want someone who's going to allow these attorneys to go back and forth and get off on these. I mean, because listen, it's from both sides. I'm not just
Oh
picking on the
yeah.
PE
Oh
folks. I mean,
yeah.
from
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
folks
Yeah.
as well. Like, these attorneys start going, and the next thing you know, it's like we're way off. And anyway, everyone's mad, and next thing you're looking at teetering the deal being killed over someone's creativity and thinking of what would happen if, like you said, the sky falls and it's the end of the world. And you just need someone that can kind of keep those egos in check and keep the deal moving, because it's really important
And
to do
just
so.
be practical arguments like, could this really happen?
Right.
You know, so those are that that's kind of important. Let's see, defining your objection or objectives. So you need to, Donnie, as Donnie said, clearly understand what your goals are. Um, but are you looking for a complete exit or maybe a partial exit? Partial exit would be rolling equity. Your strategics, and by the way, when we say strategics, we mean the public companies who are already in the business, the Rollins, the Rentokils. They're not looking for a partnership. They're looking to buy out. They're not going to let you roll equity, right? So the PE firms, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, maybe you keep 20% of it, and we'll be partners for 5 years until we exit, and hopefully that 20% will turn into significantly more than what we valued it at today. But the question is, are you interested in that? Why are you exiting? Are you exiting because you want to retire, and then now you're going to take a job with the acquirer, and you're going to work for 5 years? And could you have done that without selling? Or maybe you want to become part of a large team that's looking to exit for a much higher multiple. What I will tell you is that the multiples, the easy money in pest control roll-ups has been made. Now it's going to get more and more difficult. You just look at Rollins. Rollins is selling for 7 times sales, 7 times revenue, and like 50 times EBITDA. And so when you say that, oh, gee, we're going to, or, if somebody says, well, we're going to buy you for 20 times EBITDA and we're going to get out for a Rollins multiple, nobody has done it
Right.
except for
Yeah.
Rollins. And there's a
Yep.
reason for it. But I could put that on a spreadsheet and show you how you're going to get rich from it. Just be careful. Just be careful in terms of what the deal looks like for rolling equity.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I'm glad you brought it up. Um, I am personally not a fan of rolling equity. I'm not saying I would never do it. I'm not saying it's completely off the table, um, but I'm not a fan of it, and for several reasons. Which is, if you're banking on that, you know, there's a lot of things that have to go right in order for that to happen.
Mhm.
And like what you said, if they're saying, hey, we're going to exit at this multiple, and they don't, you know, Well, now what you were betting on and the
Yep.
value of your deal is no longer there. I'm just a fan of you get your money up
And
front.
by the way, there were a lot of people who rolled equity at the beginning of the the M&A frenzy and did really, really well.
Right.
And there are still people who are coming in and rolling equity. Let's see how all of that plays out.
Right.
I'm not so sure that everybody's going to do as well as the people who are in early.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the
So,
main thing for that point though is just know what you're willing to negotiate and know your goal. And I would not make it a long, exhaustive list, right? Maybe three or four things that this is what has to be part of the deal. And kind of like what Dan was saying, you just be upfront before you start going down the road. Like, look, here's my non-negotiables. If you can't work within these bounds, we can't work together. If you can work within this, then let's keep investigating. But that way is just you don't waste your time, you don't waste everyone else's time, and you're not wasting time on these little back and forths. And I don't want to call them games, but like the whole, like I said, someone's like they meet their number, but really they'll never meet their number. You know what I'm saying? It's more of a marketing thing just to lock the deal
well,
down.
that
So
that's it. So, we're going to buy 80% of your company, and that's going to be, a certain number. And then the other 20% is going to be worth exactly what that 80% is going to be
right,
in 5 years because we're going to do a roll up.
right.
And there's your number that, A plus B. Well, like I said, that definitely happened for those who got into it 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Will it happen in the future? It may for one or two of these roll ups, but most of them they won't.
Well, and the other thing too is that you need to look at the track record of the firm. If
Mhm.
the firm is just getting into the industry and you are the platform company, yeah, you don't know. It's a big risk, right?
Be
Because I
careful.
can tell you
Yeah.
right now, there are definitely firms who have gotten in and were rolling up and did not turn out so well. They did not
Right.
integrate very well, and that multiple was not there. And that is
Mhm.
absolutely possible. And so you need to pay attention to that, right?
Yep.
And if that's,
There's going to
I'm
be a
not
lot more of that in the future. There's going to be, because a lot of these guys are going to say, you know what, we screwed up, we're out. And the multiple that they garner on the exit's not going to be anywhere near what they thought it was going to be.
the point is that if you are going to be a platform and you're going to bet on this exit and there's no track record, I would demand a very high. You know what I mean? Like because you're taking on a big risk. Now
Mhm.
there are PE firms that they integrate very well. They've got a good management team, and I mean there's several examples. I mean Rentokil is one of them, which is where when you sell, they got a proven process and they integrate because that's really the key part, right? Is
Right.
the
So the
integration.
strategics have that they're not
Exactly.
PE, but the strategics have that transition team. They're bug people. They
Right.
understand how to get it done. Rollins, absolutely, no question.
Right.
Anticimex, those guys know how to get a deal done. And they also are smart enough to realize they just did a deal. Let's not let it fall apart. Let's
Correct.
integrate it,
Exactly.
you know.
Yep. Yep.
So and some of these PE firms might be a little bit different. The other thing is, and I like to point this out, is you got your $5 million company. Not saying that that's bad. You're probably making an outstanding living, probably in the top 1% of wage earners in the US, but you've got your $5 million company. And I say, well, you're going to run this company up to $100 million. Well, you've been doing this for 20 years and you got to 5 million. Running $100 million company or a $50 million company is a whole different ball game
Oh
than
yeah.
running a $5 million company. And there's different walls that you hit on the way up. I mean, you know it. That's
I do know
exactly
it.
what's happening with Triangle or happened
Yep.
with Triangle, right? You get to a certain plateau and you say, geez, I've outgrown this group of management, and now it's time to shift on to something bigger.
Yeah. And a real good question out of that, and I know we got to move on, is do you really want to do that? Because it has a whole different set of ramifications if you do. And
Yep.
I'm not saying you should or should not. These are all
Depends on
questions
how
to
old
raise.
you are and what
Yeah,
your goals are,
exactly.
right? A
Yep.
60, 65-year-old, probably not the energy to
No,
do it.
no.
So, okay, let's see. Conduct due diligence. Now, I don't mean the due diligence that the buyer's going to conduct on you. It's you do due diligence on the PE firm. What roll ups have they done? What industries have they rolled up? what kind of money do they have to throw at this project? And, how successful have they been? How long are they around? And, those are the kinds of things that you want to look at. Maybe get some references if it's a company who's not in pest or lawn, but this is their first, they're looking for it. You might want to talk to some of the entrepreneurs that they've purchased in other industries. How did it turn out?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a good thing to do. Um, so not obviously, if you get a deal, there's gonna be a due diligence period where they do it on you, but you should do your due diligence on the PE firm. Rollins is in pest control, Rentokil's in pest control. You don't know that XYZ PE firm is in pest control or even has any clue as to how to run a pest control company.
Right.
Okay. The next one is negotiate the terms. Terms of the deal are critical. So you're going to focus on the valuation, right? But you're going to focus on the deal structure, management roles. What are you going to be doing? Um, Retention of your employees. Is that part of a lot of these guys, both the strategics and PEs, they want to keep your team. And how are they how are they prepared to keep the team? Um, you know, and as you said before, Donnie, don't be afraid to walk away if the terms are not favorable. If you have an absolutely must, don't give in, right?
Right.
Because we've had a couple of PE deals where we went right up to the altar and they failed at the altar. We all put in a lot of work. And you know, uh, it was the objectives, what our client would argue is that the that our client had one idea in mind and thought that there was a meeting of the minds, and the PE firm had others. There's also a dirty little secret that I'll probably piss off some of the PE firms, and they're working on 5 deals at once. And
Right.
if yours is a little more complicated or whatever, they may say, you know what, we're not going to do that.
Right.
So that's but that is absolutely true. And then plan for the transition, right? Especially if you're going to roll equity. How do you make this a smooth transition? Both whether they have other pest control companies or lawn care companies that you're going to work with, or how are you going to transition from being an owner to being an employee? It's a tremendous blow to your ego.
Well, I will tell you, entrepreneurs are not good employees. They never have
No.
been and they never will be. And if you
Yep.
think for one moment that, you know, you're going to jump in under private equity and they're going to give you all this freedom and now you're going to have this endless checkbook that you can go out and buy companies and grow the business. Like it just does not work that way. And Dan, you've said it several times and it's totally true is everyone's buddy buddy until you don't make a number. And then all of a sudden the reality hits and
And
they're not
maybe
a
in your mind you make that number, but in their mind that they thought that you were going to sell more recurring work, and you're just
Mhm.
keeping it at the ratio that you were at, or something's changed. So be prepared for that. Um,
Well, and I think the other thing too is that you just have to remember that ultimately your mindset is different. You know, if you spent 20 years building a business, I'm almost positive that you make decisions that you think about what it's going to look like in 5, 10, maybe even 15 years. I mean, I just don't think you grow a large, nice company without thinking that way. When your timeline is 3 to 5 years, it's a
mhm.
completely, and they're going to be, and I'm not telling you this is bad. I'm not saying that, but it is going to create conflict. I promise you that it will, because there are going to be decisions that you're going to want to make that's probably the right long-term decision and probably the wrong short-term decision.
Yep.
And you've
Yep.
got to be okay with realizing like, hey, this is not my company anymore. I don't
Mhm.
make that call anymore. And so, this whole thing of, you know, planning your transition, the other part of this is that you've got to be a fan. I mean, really got to be a fan, not just like, hey, I just got paid. That's great. I just did it. But your people that work for you, they're not stupid. And if you're not really happy with the transition, meaning your role, if you're staying on or whatever, it's just going to have a trickle effect, and it makes it very, very difficult for a really good integration to get done. So things to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the other thing is that if you do roll equity and you become part of the team, prepare to work harder than you've ever worked because you're going to be in charge of mergers and acquisitions. You're
Oh
going to be
yeah.
in charge of operations. You're going to be in charge of everything. And just understand that that's part of the deal, right? So, how do you think enrolling equity? How do you think that equity is going to increase in value? It's because of your hard work and their money, right?
Correct.
So, you may not have had all that money to make those mergers or to do those mergers and acquisitions prior, and now you will, but be prepared to work very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. And usually when people do a transaction, they want to do the opposite, right? It's time to go to the beach, buy the beach house, do
yeah,
whatever. Like it's
I just sold my company for tens of millions of
right.
dollars. What do I want to
Right.
work so hard for?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's the issue.
Yep.
So like, listen, being bought out by a strategic or a PE firm can be a transformative event. Um, you know, but you got to prepare. You got to put a strong team of you know, uh, your lawyer, your broker, your accountant, your wealth advisor, put them together, clear understanding of your objectives, and then, hopefully if you've done all of that, that you can expect to get top dollar and also a really good transaction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the main thing out of all of this is that it's really just upfront knowing who you are and what you want and not allowing yourself to get, I don't know, swayed in and not like create as much clarity up front as you can, because I promise you the process, like you will have to get clear on that, and you may end up making concessions or putting yourself in a position where, I mean, I've known several friends who sold, and then I talked to them 5 years later, and they were like, I should not have done that. And then these were younger folks. These were not, I mean, I've got more friends who sold. It's like best thing I ever did.
Mhm.
Right. It really depends on where they're at in life, but I mean, ultimately that's really what it's all about, is just you being clear, super, super clear up front. That means actually writing stuff down. And that way, when you get into it, you're not, your emotions don't take over. And, when you're done 5 years later, you can be like, yep, that was the best thing I did. So,
Yeah. So if you take one thing from this episode out is everybody's getting all the letters. By the way, I run an accounting firm. I get letters from PE firms, probably just as many as you, to buy the accounting firm, right?
mhm.
Some are serious, some aren't. Some are tire kickers. Just understand that the more you want to learn, the more you want to go down that road just to learn, the more work it's going to be. If you're willing to put that in, that's fine. It can be disruptive. Maybe some of your team finds out about it and you're really not ready to sell. You don't want to put that, you don't want to put that idea in their head
Exactly.
because, you want to start tanking your culture and your good feelings for your team and about your team.
Well, that's
That's
the
a
whole
good way to do it.
Maslow,
Yeah.
needs. I mean,
Yeah.
security is way down there,
Yeah.
and then you just took it out from them. So,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Well, I think this has been a great chat. And again, I hope if you take anything out of this, much like what Dan was saying, is just really think this through, and hopefully you're not like, well, PE is bad or PE is great. It's a tool, and I think there are good PE firms out there, just like there's great strategics out there. It really comes down to what what are your objectives and what's your goal, and completely once you get to that point and you're ready to do a transaction. Okay, with
Yep.
a reminder, there's just all the resources and topics that we talked about today are available on the podcast website. We just go to pmpindustryinsider.com, take a look under show notes. There's a summary of this episode there. And we always appreciate any ratings and reviews that you can give us, so long as they're positive. And if they're negative, or if there's critiques, of course, we ask that you just send those to Dan, because he likes doing that kind of stuff. So with that,
Yes. Yes.
we're going
Yes.
to sign off. We'll see you all next time. Take care.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.